right. Well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Erica. I'm John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, you're not on vacation. We're back to the regular background in there. You've got your Pink Floyd shirt on. What are you drinking today before we get started with this
I've
review?
got a Perlenbacher Hefeweizen,
Oh,
and it's a one
ah,
pint. So,
all right.
so, I'm starting early. So we're recording. What time is it? We're recording at
It's like,
4:30.
yeah.
So I'm starting early.
And I'm on I'll just say I'm on an Italian Pilsner. Whether it's one or two, doesn't matter. It is only 4:30. So it's been a long work week and a lot of crap. So anyway, so here we are. We're leading into this weekend with the Giants Bengals. It is a primetime game, which has not been a thing of beauty for the Giants. First off, kind of just overall, we'll get to some of the specifics about the injuries and things like that. Thoughts coming off from Seattle, now heading into a home game, primetime game against the Bengals.
Well, I didn't think we'd be in this position after the 1-3 start. So they've got a tremendous opportunity here. You said Sunday night's not been kind to us. We talked to our last guest we had on, Ryan Dunleavy. We talked about they seem to be a little tighter when they play at home in front of the home crowd. So they've got to get over some mental hurdles here. But if they can get to 3-3 after the way this thing started and the way the division is right now, I take that. So, when I looked at the original schedule, I did think at one point, if we could just stay at around 500 in the first 6 games, it would be not great, but it would be, they could survive that. I didn't think they would get there this way. Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
so who I mean they still have to beat the Bengals, and that's going to be a challenge with the injuries that we have. We'll get into that in a second, but there's a tremendous opportunity here.
Yeah, it's interesting when we did our preview, which we both laughed at as soon as the Vikings game was over. We were like, "Our God, our season preview did not go the way we wanted
No,
it to."
no.
But a lot of the things that we talked about have come to fruition so far. The division has come back to the rest of the teams. Washington's out in front, but I do believe that's a bit of a mirage. That's they are playing well, and they do have a what appears to be a stud rookie quarterback to build around. But we all know how things go, and we know the fact that the Giants should have won the game against Washington. We should have beaten them.
Mm.
Washington has they've been playing some tight games with some folks that some things have really gone their way so far, and at some point that's not always going to happen, and you can't rely on just the ball bouncing your way to have Giants at 22 or classic. We had a lot of things that bounced our way early, then it didn't for a while. Things you get caught up. So I think we'll see what happens there. Dallas has got problems. Dallas has a lot of issues. They got a lot of injuries. They're not exactly they beat a Steeler team that couldn't get anything done offensively, and the game was pretty damn close. So, and then you got Philadelphia. Now they had their bye, but that might backfire on them having a bye after week 4. You've now got 13 weeks of games to go, and there's no more break for you going forward. And we know Saquon Barkley's had a lot of work early. So the division has come back to the Giants.
Right.
And
But
again,
we got to win.
and that's had things. I know. Just bear with me. I know what I'm saying. I'm not. Had it bounced a little differently, had they beaten Washington, just Washington, forget Dallas. This team right now is 3-2. We're a game behind, and in fact, we would be tied for first because we would have beaten Washington. Washington would be 3-2 instead of 4-1. That's how crazy it is, and Giant fans have been really disappointed with the way things are. And then we went to Seattle. The game got a lot tighter than it should have. But you know what? I saw the same thing happen last night. The 49ers took a big lead. They dominated early. The Giants really dominated early too, minus the one fumble that was returned for a touchdown. You take that out of the equation, Seattle did nothing in the
Right.
first half, but they crawled back in as they did last night. That's the nature of this league. The Giants, to me, if you don't build off that thing from Seattle, then the season is really, it's just going to be, for those who love to say this, it's just going to be those empty wins here or there that gets you 5 or 6 wins and whatever. You have to play,
Right.
you have to build off the Seattle game.
Right. And that's kind of where we're at as a crossroads. Are we going to do what you just said and have the few wins, the few good wins that also kind of mess with the draft thing? or are we going to have a much more interesting season where we might be in play late in the year for a wild card spot? So that's kind of where we're at now. They could still survive a 2-4 start. It would be very difficult, but they could do it. But 3-3 is a different. It sounds strange because it's only a 1 game difference, but 3-3 just sounds a lot better than 2-4, and so does winning 2 games back to back against teams that when the schedule first came out, you thought, well, that's going to be tough. Going to Seattle and beating Seattle in Seattle, and then everyone thought Cincinnati was going to be a legit Super Bowl contender and at least a playoff team. And they're desperate. I mean, this is it for them. And it'll be interesting to see how they react because that was a horrible loss for them. It was a great game, but that was a horrible loss for them last week. So they could come into this game sort of hung over a little bit because of that was kind of their season in a way, and so they this could be a letdown, or they could be really really desperate and play lights out against us. So that it'll be interesting. Then you got, like we said, we got the Sunday night factor. And
Right,
then
right.
we'll get into it, but their defense isn't good. But this is a bad game to have. I mean, Malik Nabers could have tore their secondary up. It's such a shame that Malik's not playing because their secondary is a mess because not only have they not been playing well, but they lost one of their starting corners with an ACL, and their nickel back is going to play this. He's questionable going to this game, so it's iffy if he's even going to play. If he plays, he's still playing with an injury. So this is just I wish we were more full strength in this game because I would like our chances a lot better because Kayvon Thibodeau's out on the other side of the ball, and I think we can survive without Devin Singletary, who's questionable, because what Tyrone Tracy did last week. But it's just and now our punter's hurt, so that's
Yeah.
the other thing.
Yeah.
So
So let's
yeah,
before we get into the breakdown, let's focus on that for a minute. You kind of got the heads up early on that we might not have come out of Seattle
oh,
unscathed.
yeah,
And then also that Neighbors might still be another week away. At least we don't want to say we don't know for sure the following week, but at least this week for sure, he probably wasn't going to play. So you look at that and you say, normally you go, oh man, that's one of your best defensive players. That's your best offensive players, your best wide receiver for sure, probably your best overall offensive player. But you just beat Seattle in
right.
Seattle without your best offensive player. So we'll take that on its own piece in a second. The Kayvon Thibodeau thing's a little bit different though. We have
Mm-hmm.
two stalwarts for us, outside guys. We have a third guy that we were familiar with, but he's kind of regressed, and whether it's through injury,
Mm-hmm.
body, whatever it is, he got bigger, he lost some flexibility. He's had a lot of injuries, but he can still play some. But he has not played full time at all in forever. And then we got kind of nothing. Like there isn't anybody else after that you can really go, we got that guy on the outside. So what's your thoughts in there? Like where the Giants are going to have to overcome and where they're going to get that other rush
Yeah,
from the other side.
that's a problem. There are going to be fans out there that say Kayvon is overrated. It's now no big loss. What other teams, in my opinion, are doing is they are concentrating on Dexter, and and they know that Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau can cause problems. So they have adjusted what they have done, many of our opponents, because of those three. And sometimes it shows up in the stat line, and sometimes it doesn't. Kayvon's actually been playing reasonably well.
Yeah.
What people want are what Dexter did, the 3-sack game, the strip fumble, that kind of thing. If you take Kayvon out of the equation against Joe Burrow, right? So this is a scary team to play against. I mean, in terms of this, look, they're 1-4, and the only team they've beaten is the Panthers. So the Giants shouldn't be terribly scared of them. They should be a healthy respect for them, but they shouldn't be scared of them. But they are fourth in scoring in the NFL. They score 28 points exactly per game, which you and I have talked about the Giants' issues with scoring. We got the
Right.
29 last week. That was a season high. So we're flirting in that danger zone with the Giants. If we give up 28 points to them, Can our offense score? So Burrow's probably the best quarterback we'll face this year. I was looking through the schedule, and depending on what you think of Jaden Daniels right now, and Lamar Jackson right now, I would say he's probably still the best quarterback that we're going to. If he's not the best, he's one of the best quarterbacks we're going to face. The guy's a stud, and Jamar Chase is a stud, and T. Higgins is a stud. So, in order to stop them from going off against our secondary, we got to get to the quarterback. And if you take Thibodeau out of that equation, and Azeez Ojulari doesn't step up to the plate, this could get problematic for the Giants. So we're leading the league in sacks. We've got 22. People are going to say, well, that's a lot of them aren't coming from Kayvon, but it just changes everything up front when you take one of those pieces away. And that's what I'm a little bit worried about, because to me, in order to get a win here, we need our pass rush to be like it was against Seattle and like it was against Cleveland.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, obviously Azeez is going to be the guy. He might not be the every down guy, though.
No,
I'm not
right.
sure they're going to do that. I think he's going to come in when it's a pass rush time to take Thibodeau's spot there. I also think you could see them kind of throwing Chapman outside.
You froze.
Hopefully I didn't.
Yeah, you froze there. So the last thing you said was Chapman.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking maybe they might be able to move Chapman or somebody else outside to assist with some of that rush, maybe a Simmons, maybe something like that. But yeah, that piece, the one thing about Thibodeau, he's kind of the Carl Banks to LT kind of thing. He's more of the physical run player than Burns is. Like he does play, he sets the edge on the run more than Burns does.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the bend dynamic pass rusher that you get that we thought we might be getting, but he is a power rusher and he does come through. So we're going to need to make that up. The thing that's a little scary, and you have to be careful, we're going to give up yards. You're going to give up yards. You have to be careful though that we shut them down in the red zone, because the Bengals now they've scored 11 touchdowns in 16 red zone attempts. So they are a high touchdown producing team in the red zone. We need to be very careful about, once we get in a little bit closer to our end, that we tighten things up. But that pass rush piece, some of it's going to be dictated by the early downs, though. You can't give up 4 or 5 rushing yards on first down and giving them easier downs, because now they can pick you apart. Because now you can't blitz, you can't bring others. You got to play both the run and the pass. So it'll be early down, amazingly enough, is going to be the bigger key here than necessarily who's going to be the other guy outside.
Yeah, and the other thing is who do we have that matches up with T. Higgins? So we're still. I mean, it looks like Adoree Jackson is over the calf. They have him as probable, and they didn't. He fully practiced today. Cordell Flott's actually been playing pretty decently the last 2 games, but T. Higgins is 6'4". He's 220. Yeah, he's a big dude, and he could muscle Cordell Flott. So I'm a little worried about that matchup. So I don't know how they're going to handle that. I mean, they could put Nick McLeod on him, but Nick's been playing the nickel because Drew Phillips has got the calf injury too. So I'm just curious. The good news is this is, and I do want to mention this too, is Shane Bowen has a history of coaching against this team when he was with Tennessee. So, and they did pretty decently against them. And I do want to do a shout out so far, and hopefully I'm not jinxing them, but Giants are 10th in defense right now. And we haven't been 10th anywhere near a top 10 defense in a while. And he's really out coaching Wink Martindale right now. So
yeah,
the run defense is much, much better. The help that Seattle didn't try to run the ball, but our run defense stats we've jumped to the middle of the pack from being bottom tier, and we're 10th. We're 10th in yards allowed, and we're 11th in points allowed, and that factors in the touchdown Gray, the fumble Gray did. So maybe we're even 10th or something in points allowed. I'd have to do the math. So we're very respectable right now on defense, and we're trending up. So this could be an ugly game for them, but this could be also a signature game for them. If our defense plays well in this game against this offense, against this quarterback, against those wide receivers, which a lot of people aren't expecting. I saw the NFL does a preview, and they had like 10 or 12 of their experts call, who's going to win this game. All but two said Cincinnati. So everyone's picking
Good.
Cincinnati to win this game. So if we go in there and the defense plays well in this game, I think we have to start really giving more accolades to what Bowen's doing right now. So it's just a tremendous opportunity, but it's a scary opponent. Got to keep them off the field. That's why I would stay balanced on offense, try to control the clock, but they got to get to Burrow. And I was surprised. I guess I in the last podcast I mentioned that their offensive line wasn't so hot, but they've actually only given up 11 sacks this year, and we've given up 12, and our offensive line is actually doing better than it has in memory. So Burrow hasn't actually been getting sacked like crazy like he has in recent years too.
True. But they're not playing well though. And
No.
they did suffer another injury on their offensive line last week against the Ravens. So if we looked at some just quick do some comparison, and when you're watching the podcast you'll actually see what I'm talking about. But offensively on a passing game, Jones is 114 of 178, so we've thrown the ball 178 times for 1138 yards. His completion percentage is low, much lower than it normally is for Jones. Jones is usually in the mid 60s, and ever since his rookie year, his completion percentage has gone up. We drop a lot of passes, so it's in the low 60s. So he's got 1138 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Burrow has thrown, amazingly enough, has thrown the ball 5 less times, has completed 125 for 1370. And here's the part where it gets a little tight: 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
He doesn't throw to.
He froze again.
Hope not.
Yeah.
Am I good? Am I back?
Yeah.
Boy, Fridays late in the afternoon apparently is not the time to be doing this here in South Carolina. So anyway, double the touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. So we're going to have to be careful there. On the receiving side of things, Jamar Chase is a big play wide receiver. 29 receptions, but almost 500 yards, 5 touchdowns already. So when you think about it, Nabers, who's not playing, has 35 receptions. So 6 more receptions for over 100 yards less than what Chase has. So Chase is a big play receiver. Then they go Higgins, then they go Gesicki. So they spread it out, but Chase is the guy. So that's going to be Banks's guy. He's got to be Banks's guy.
You think.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
So it's kind of been like, I talked about this in the game preview, it's kind of been a murderer's role for Banks. So he did really well on McLaurin. He did really well against DK Metcalf. Amani Cooper, gave up the 2 touchdowns. He was right there, but he gave them up. He actually didn't do too bad against the Minnesota guy, Jefferson. And who was the other guy who he had? Who was the other guy?
Well, he had CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb. And of course there was the CeeDee Lamb.
Or Dez Bryant, depending on who's talking about him.
So it's been sort of, if people won't get that if they didn't watch it.
Go back and watch the thing.
Yeah. I kind of wish we could actually put him against Higgins because he's a more physical guy, but I think they've got to put him on Jamar Chase because of the athletic ability. So yeah, so it's another. And the one thing I'm hoping is that the competition with Malik throughout the summer sort of rubbed off on Ty Banks with this. So there's sort of similar receivers a little bit, the LSU thing and similar athletic explosiveness and so forth. So I'm hoping that, that he won't be shocked by Jamar Chase, in other words, because he practiced all summer against Malik Nabers. But that's kind of scary. And I already harped on it, but I would not discount Higgins. And then they have a tight end that can catch. But that's the thing with this offense is if you do the math, Burrow's averaging 100 yards and a touchdown every game. So 5 games, he's got 500 yards, he's got 5 touchdowns. So he's going to get his 100 yards and he's probably going to get a touchdown in this game. Even if Banks plays well, he's probably going to get that because he's that good. I'm worried about what do the other guys do too. So that's why the pass. Hopefully they don't get the running game going. If they get the running game going, then that but they're not running the ball terribly well, and
No,
some of that's because that probably some of their games have gotten out of hand. But they're not running really well. But let's assume they don't run wild against the Giants. We got to get the Burrow, and Burrow's again one of these guys you can sack him like Ryan Dunleavy mentioned, you could sack him 9 times and he still can beat you. We've seen games like that where he's done that, but that's how they got to get to him. They cannot let him sit back there and throw against the secondary, or it's going to be a long, long day. And the question is then, like you said, say they go up and down the field, can you stop them in the red zone and keep them out of the end zone at that point
right.
and force 3 points instead of 7? Because they're
Well,
scoring 28 points a game. That's a lot. They're fourth in the NFL.
now the good thing is who they've played has opened the door to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning they've played other teams that got out to leads on them, that put points on them. So they had no choice but to continue to score. The one
Right.
game they didn't do very much in point wise, because they're 1-4. You look at their stats, you think they're 4-1. They're 1-4.
Right.
Their defense is bad. But
Really bad.
one game that their offense didn't really do much was against the Patriots, who have no offense, and they lost that game at home.
That's a head scratcher. That
that's
was a head scratcher. I
and
mean,
they struggled with Carolina. They did not put that game away until later in the game. They
that's what I'm
allowed
saying.
Carolina to move.
There is a tremendous opportunity here. So get over
And
the Sunday night hump. Give the fans something to cheer about. Get to 3-3. No excuses. I mean, again, hopefully they've learned their lesson with the kicker, and they sign a
yeah,
punter tomorrow. So we have a punter
and put him on the roster. By the
just in
way,
case.
you don't go to the game and go, "Well, we didn't activate him." Well, no.
Yeah.
See, the whole point of having a backup is to activate him.
Yeah, look, the linebacker you might have brought up in the practice squad doesn't matter. The punter does. And again, I know there's no punter on the roster right now, but they've got to do something by tomorrow because
Yeah,
you cannot go into this game. If they go into this game and we lose because we don't have a punter, I'm going to jump off a bridge.
a really
You know?
a really interesting perfect storm, if you want to think of it that way, or a perfect matchup, right? What's one of the most improved things of the New York Giants? Well, their offensive line, and what's the most improved portion of the offensive line is their pass blocking. Even though
Yeah.
we've given up 12 sacks, fact of the matter is, if you take out week 1, they have played much better that way and have really protected Jones. I mean, against Seattle was perfect. I'm not saying Seattle's some sort of juggernaut pass rushing team, but Jones could do what he wanted to do. The Bengals have 6 total sacks.
That's
Six
it.
total
6.
sacks.
Yeah. And
If you
they're at the bottom. They're like fourth or third
Yeah,
worst.
they're way down,
Yeah.
way down. So if you stay ahead of the chains a little bit, so you can't be 2nd and 10, but if you can get, if you get like 4 or 5 yards on first down, if we're 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, the playbook is wide open. They can't bring extra pressure because they don't know what you're going to do. They've got to play both the run and the pass.
Because they're terrible against the run too. Whoops,
Right.
I
Oh
interrupt
my
this after
God.
drink.
No,
So
you're fine. They are horrible against the run. The Ravens showed that. And that, I mean, Derrick Henry ran him right through him late in overtime. So if you stay ahead of that, you're gonna be winning downs. You're gonna be winning more plays. We've got to score. If you score and can get ahead, that puts all the pressure on the Bengals. If we go down the field and we kick a field goal, now we got problems.
yeah, and remember what's the last time? Remember when we played Dallas and their deep defense was bottom? It was
Yes.
32nd. Who did they play that week before they played us? They played
Baltimore.
Baltimore, who ran wild in them. So we see Baltimore running wild against Cincinnati. I hope we don't have a repeat where all of a sudden Tyrone Tracy or Singletary, if he plays, can't runs for 22 yards against this team. We got to be balanced. So we got to, first of all, what you said is 100% correct. You got to score touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, Cincinnati's going to score. Sometimes this is one thing that drives me nuts sometimes with fans is the other team has talent, and some teams you just can't shut down. If we shut down Cincinnati, I will be pleasantly surprised. But you got to figure they're going to put some points up on the board. If they
Right.
don't, great. But like you said, if we get field goals and not touchdowns, that will come back and haunt us. So that's number one. But number two, I would like, even as much as I've been saying, quick strike, let's start throw deep. And I think they need to do that against this game, in this game against this secondary. I also want to hold on to the football in this game because I would love to have a time of possession advantage like we did last week. And one of the issues that Seattle had last week was they weren't on the field that much, and some of
Right.
it was long drives by us. Some of us was that turnover took out a possession. But they had 17 offensive plays in the first half. I think that was the number last week, which is an ungodly low number. And if you can limit the number of times possessions that Cincinnati has, then that will help us out tremendously too. So I really want to be balanced. I would run the ball. Their secondary's banged up, but they're terrible at run defense. This is a game where they need Daniel to play well. They need the no letdown by our offensive line, both run blocking and pass blocking, because this is an opponent that they should be able to push around some. If they could push around Seattle and they could push around Cleveland, this is a much easier defense to push around. They should be, but we said that about the Dallas team, and look what happened with the running game in that team. So we pass blocked very well against Dallas, but for whatever reason in that game we didn't. So I want
Yeah.
to be balanced. Tyrone Tracy, feed him the ball. Hopefully, holds onto the ball. Daniel Jones do the same thing. Throw to Theo Johnson, throw to Wandale, throw to Darius Slayton. This game, I would take a couple, 2 shots to Jalen Hyatt.
I think that's going to happen.
Don't telegraph it like you've been talking about with personnel packages.
Yeah.
Take some shots with him. It's a banged up secondary. It's a bad secondary. It's a well coached defense. That's kind of what's weird is their defensive coordinator is an ex Giants coach who has done well in the past, but this defense for Cincinnati, it's killing them. So here's
I
an opportunity.
think I'm going to go against a little bit of what you said only because I think sometimes you have to go away from the obvious slightly because what I thought worked against us against Dallas is we did try to run and we knew Dallas was going to try to stop the run. And we weren't that great yet offensive line wise. They hadn't played that many games yet. You knew Dallas was going to be really pissed over how badly they got walked on the week before. And they didn't respect the Giants at all. They didn't respect Jones. They don't respect Jones. They don't respect any of the other stuff because they've owned us. Right. And they sold out to stop the run. And we kind of ran a lot of plays that gave right into that. Right. If we had opened up and attacked them early, just immediately attacked them and stayed with it for a little while, that opens the run game. I think in this case, we've got to run some early, but I wouldn't do it a lot and I wouldn't come out doing it. I would spread them out right off and try to get some passes going immediately to get them to have to start backing off because they're going to try to sell the run. They've got to fix what they know is a problem.
And that's not a bad strategy as long as Daniel plays well. So,
but if you coach
he plays
scared,
like he did against Seattle, the thing with this is this: if Daniel plays like he did in Seattle for the rest of the year, he's our quarterback moving forward. As much as people don't want to hear that, if you look at the Seattle version of Daniel Jones every week,
right.
This is a playoff team. We will be in the playoffs, and Daniel Jones will play the rest of his contract. The problem is, again, what Ryan talked about when we did our last show is you don't get that version of Daniel on a consistent enough.
Right.
Basis. You often get the Daniel who's 30th quarterback, not a top 12 quarterback. So I like your strategy. And in a way, maybe it's better that we do it so we do know once and for all about Daniel. So let's take the gloves off.
Right.
Let him do it. And if he screws up, then we really know. So yeah, the thing about this is this, and I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. Dallas was a team that strength of their defense was rushing the passer and coverage. They were dead last against the run. Cincinnati is 30th in run defense. They're sort of, I think they're 18th in pass defense, but they're getting worse because they can't rush the passer, and now they've lost defensive backs. So in this game, I would do what the defense, and this is supporting what you're saying. I would do what the defense gives you. So if they're going to crowd the line of scrimmage against the run, then I would throw the football. If they play back, then I would run the football. So I would do my game plan would be flexible based on what they're doing. I would have Daniel change the plays depending on what he sees what they're doing in the box in this. That's
And
what I would.
sometimes you have to do the convent is a Shang Tsung's art of war where you attack their weakness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes though, that's not actually what you need to do. Sometimes you have to stick with what your strength is, regardless of what they are, because that's what you are. Their deficit is pass rush. Our strength in our offensive line so far has been pass protection. So why go away from that? Why fear something that they're not good at because we're trying to establish something else that they might be trying to fortify too, because they're not good at that either. When you think about their pass defense, you say, well, they're like 18th, so they're middling.
Right.
They played New England, who
Yeah.
did almost nothing in that game and still won. They played Carolina, who was playing Andy Dalton.
Right.
They haven't played the guys where their defense has been torched.
Right.
Washington, Baltimore. I mean, they're giving up tons and tons of plays. Their offense has kept them in games. And that's what I fear is we might be facing a team that their offense is going to do everything it can to keep them in the game. We have to do everything to take that game. You can't hold on to it and not lose. You have to win it.
Right.
And so,
And again, my thing always just comes back to Daniel Jones again. So if Eli
agreed.
Manning is the quarterback on this team, I 100% have no, I would throw if they're crowding the line of scrimmage. And I think they'll probably do it with Daniel Jones anyways. I'm just saying we don't know what version of Daniel we're going to get.
I
Are we
no,
going
I
to get the
totally
Daniel?
agree.
Are we going to get the Daniel who, when he throws, has a free play and he throws deep and so underthrows the receiver? Or are we going to get the guy who Danny Dimes version, who threw a perfect 41-yard pass to Slayton last week? We get that version of Daniel Jones. Great. So again, that's why this game's interesting, is because if we go into this game and we score 19 points against this defense,
Yeah,
then that's bad. I mean, that's really bad because there's no excuse for us
right,
not to
right.
score with this offensive line. Now, I wish we had Malik Nabers. I tell you, if we had Malik Nabers against this secondary, I would. I mean, Malik Nabers might have scored 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game, and
But
hopefully,
you made a great point in the last show, and what was that point? Was Neighbors was out. Slayton played Neighbors'
yeah,
role.
yeah,
It didn't matter that it was Neighbors or Slayton. The guy in that role was the guy that was getting the ball, and he was
yeah.
getting big plays. It's almost by design. It's almost I think
Hmm.
Neighbors is better, period, and would
Right,
achieve more. But it's not a huge drop off other than the potential drops with Slayton in that he has speed, so he can get deep. He's Jones trusts him almost more than anybody else on the team. They've had that connection for a long time. I think, quite frankly, Neighbors is the least of my worries about this game. Kayvon Thibodeau is the bigger worry for me.
Oh no, I agree.
And then
I'm
Singletary
just saying
only because,
Malik might have had a huge
oh,
game.
I totally
Yeah.
agree. But Singletary is my other worry only because that means Eric Gray's got to play more. And then you potentially need to have another back just in case. I don't think someone asked, and I'll say it real quick, you don't bench Gray from being the second running back when you don't have any other running backs. You just don't put him. He's not the goal line guy. Tracy needs to be the goal line guy. You don't give him goal line
Eric Gray
carries
is
after what's happened.
Eric Gray is one more fumble away from being cemented to the bench, probably.
Exactly.
But I still will not give up on him right now because again, the talent is there. People, I don't know why people are so enamored with Turbo. Again, I like the speed.
He's
He's a
yeah.
great story, but in the preseason, the best back on this team in the preseason was Eric Gray. It wasn't even Devin Singletary. It was Eric Gray. He was both catching the ball, running the ball. And he was really good on that drive, catching the ball until the fumble. But if you fumble, you're going to lose your job. So Eric Gray has talent. So I think it was Motown Giants fans said, well, Eric Gray should be benched. But who's our number two back in this game? I said, Eric Gray.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah,
Eric
you
Gray's
can't.
the number two back. It's not going to be Turbo Miller.
Do you know?
Turbo Miller's a nice story, but he's not the backup running back on this team right now. And again, he's if we'd seen him explode in the preseason, I'd be more on board with this. But we didn't. I still don't know why people are.
But even then, it's the preseason. It was like here or there. Do you know who he's starting to remind me of for Giants fans?
Keith Elias?
No. But that's good. But I'm thinking more like along the same lines of a speed guy, whatever. Not same position though. If you remember, the Giants had a receiver, and he was about fourth on the depth chart, named Brian Alford, who was a speed guy. Everybody kept thinking he's going to come in. It went right along with everybody thought we should be benching everybody, and Mike Cherry should be the starting quarterback. So it's those kind of things. You want something because you've seen a little bit here or there, and you're like, that's the greatest thing. But keep in mind what we saw him doing. It's like the beginning of the movie Major League when he's like, oh, look at the power he's hitting with right there. He's like, yeah, off a guy who's going to be bagging groceries next week. So you can't take Miller, who, if anybody else in the league thought he was spectacular, he wouldn't even be on our practice squad.
Well, and I'm not giving up on the guy, but he hasn't done anything yet.
Right.
We didn't even see the explosive plays in the preseason or anything like that. So
plus,
I would like to see Turbo Miller at some point as a kick returner, as a stepping stone, and then get moving on. But again, the problem with this game, and you I think you were alluding to it a little bit. The problem with this game is because of the punting situation now. Say they sign a punter to the practice squad and elevate him. That's one of your elevations. So they may be a little bit, things may be a little bit weird this week with the elevations because
it depends on if we put Thibodeau on IR. Then it opens up.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. They may do that on Saturday. They may
and that's where someone said, why would you do that? He might be a few weeks because they might actually want to do some roster juggling for this week. And he might go to IR because you want to be able to just fill that spot with somebody that you need, but it might not be a guy at the same position though.
And Dable didn't discount that today. Dable said he might be headed to IR. That's interesting. Yeah, that could happen. And that way you don't have to you could just sign the punter for this game to the 53. So they could do that too. So but anyway, just to go full circle on this. So big picture with Cincinnati's is they're beatable. Of course they are. They're 1-4. They're not having the season they expected. Their defense is a train wreck. And now it's getting hurt. The offense begins and ends. Well, I shouldn't say ends. It doesn't end. But it begins with Joe Burrow, but it's with those two wide receivers. It's a little bit like the 2011 Giants with Eli Manning and Victor Cruz and Hakeem Nicks. They were the team until the defense and the running backs, who were terrible during the regular season, caught up in the postseason. So if we can somehow limit the damage Cincinnati does on offense, which is a big if, we should be able to win this game. If we get the 3-3 heading into the Eagles game, I'll take it. I'll take it, and then we'll go. Then I'll be energized. And I hope we get there because right now, I don't know if you're picking this up, that the Giant fan base is still down. I mean, there's not a lot of chatter right now.
They don't want to jump. No one wants to step out and be all excited after the one game because we've seen this. We've seen the peak and then it goes flat. And it's a perfect recipe for the hardest part about being a Giants fan, for me anyway, is you start to feel good even just a little bit. And then the game that you're watching next is on a stage where no one else is playing at the same time. So
froze again. Wait a minute.
Tell me if I'm done.
Yeah, you're back.
There we go. Oh, I do not like doing this on Friday. But then it's a national game, no other competition, and everybody's watching, and they fall flat, and it becomes an embarrassment. It gets talked about. That's the hard part. Here we are, a team that has struggled, but we're feeling better about ourselves. We're playing a game, and what is it? Nationally broadcast game with no other competition that night. We cannot fall flat. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the Bengals have scored 140 points per game so far.
Mhm.
They've given up 145. Our less than prolific scoring offense must take advantage of a team that's given up 145
Yeah,
points in 5 games.
if we score 6 points in the first half or something like that. So the other thing that's sucking the wind out of people, it's what you just said, but what's also sucking the wind out of it is this. So we beat Seattle, and one of the things that wasn't talked about is the Giants reported no injuries in the game. Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone got hurt, and the players that did kind of go out, like Kayvon, immediately came back in, and he played the rest of the game. So we're like, oh, we not only won our most convincing game, but where we came out of it pretty darn healthy.
Right.
So during the week, we find out Malik's not coming back. Devin Singletary may not be coming back. Worse, Kayvon's now gone 4 to 6 weeks. And somehow on Friday, we find out our punter is now hurt. So it's like we're getting hurt. It's like, and I know people are saying, well, that's because of the age that we live in, and you hear about the injuries now, but you didn't hear about the injuries back in the day. That's partially true, but I don't ever remember having to worry about Sean Landetta or
Yeah, the kicker ones are
Jeff
weird.
Eagles getting
Like,
hurt in the practice and then not being available for a game. I don't remember that, or Jennings. It's like, how did we hurt our
well,
punter
and
during
it's
during the week?
it's his hamstring on his left leg.
Yeah, but the hamstrings could be. I mean, that could linger. This could be a
Right.
problem the rest of the year. We don't.
But my point is he's a right-footed kicker.
Yeah,
How the hell did you pull your
I don't.
hammy on your left
I
leg?
don't know.
Like, are you running
I don't.
sprints? I
I
don't
don't.
want my punter running sprints if
There's
that's the
probably a
case.
lot of force that comes off that leg when you punt. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
you just don't ever hear about a punter getting hurt during punters usually get hurt when somebody runs into them. It's not like you
Right.
hear, or who was that kicker years ago, the place kicker, the
Oh,
Tampa Bay guy who jumped up and down and
Zendejas. It
yeah,
was no, it was he was
he
it
tore his
was
ACL.
yeah, he was the Cardinals kicker. It was the Cardinals kicker after he made it and he jumped up and he
Oh,
just
that's
then
what it was.
yeah, and he
Okay,
tore
I
his
thought it was Tampa.
he
Yeah,
tore his ACL. I'm like, you idiot. I'm
we shouldn't be
like,
laughing about it, but that's a giant thing to do. It's amazing that didn't
well, you're
happen.
celebrating a field goal in the early portion of the game. It's not even a game winner. I'm like, why are you getting so excited?
Like you should have seen me back in 2008. The morning I got on in the morning to check out the website, and I'm checking out, and I'm like, Plaxico Burress got shot.
Oh
What?
my god.
We're cruising to the playoffs. We're having this awesome year,
Why you
and
got to
it's
bring that
like,
up?
what do you mean? I thought I was hallucinating. What do you mean Plaxico? He
Yeah.
shot himself. What was
And
that?
Antonio Pierce was there, so that
Yeah.
dragged him into stuff. And I'm like, oh my god.
I
Anyway,
didn't. I mean, it's anyways. That's
we'll
and
keep
then
we'll keep it tight because we want to
yeah,
keep the
yeah.
game
I
previews time.
know. Yeah.
So, real quick, not necessarily just the obvious. Someone on offense that you think is going to be the key. I know we think Jones, and if you want to stick with Jones, that's fine. But maybe somebody not so obvious, and then
Well, I won't
somebody
be
on
obvious.
defense.
I won't be obvious. I mean, I think Jones has to play well for them to win. But I think as well as he played statistically last week, Tyrone Tracy is due for some big plays. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised if we start kind of comparing him a little bit to Ahmad Bradshaw a little bit. Remember that playoff game? I mean, not playoff game. It sent us to the playoffs against the Bills, where he
Against
had that
Buffalo,
long touchdown.
started to
That's
snow in
one of
that
my
game.
favorite
Yeah,
plays
yeah,
because the snow starts and he
yep,
runs. But he reminds me a little bit of Ahmad Bradshaw in the ability to the way he runs and his ability. I think he's got some breakaway ability to him. So I'm going to say, and I know you said come out throwing, but I think Tyrone Tracy could take over this game. Hold on to the ball, but I think he could take over this game. But that being said, remember, I was really excited about facing the Dallas Cowboys and their 32nd ranked defense, and then
yep.
we had 23 yards rushing against them. But I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy in this game.
Okay, okay. And on the defensive side,
Brian Burns. Well,
Burns.
you know what? You know what? I'm
No,
going to
well,
take a step back. We are not giving enough credit to Dexter Lawrence. So Dexter Lawrence is playing at another level, and it was kind of silly for me not to give him talk. I talked about him a little bit last week and would kind of he's on a historical pace here, but I'm going to say I think the worst thing the way you make a quarterback feel really uncomfortable is pressure in his face up the middle. So I'm going to say Dexter Dexter is the key to this game. If he can get in Burrow's face consistently up the gut and make him uncomfortable right up the middle, that'll be the difference.
So on the offensive side, I was thinking there's two guys I've been all week long. One of them has kept coming up in my mind. I'm going to hold that one for a second. The key guy, though, I think I'm going to go with Wandell. I think he had a bad game last week, even though he played well. He's dropped too many. That needs to stop. But the one thing about him is he's getting open. He finds a way to get open. He takes shots on these passes, which I really wish we would stop doing, short of the sticks, and then he takes a shot, spins away, and picks up the first down. I'd like to see those be past the marker when you catch the ball first. But he's a guy that he's going to, as we develop more on the outside, as we get a pressure, and I think Johnson stepping up, teams are going to have to start watching him. He's going to eat the middle. That's going to open things up for Wandell. I think Wandell's going to have a big game. I think he's going to have his first double-digit receiving game in terms of receptions, and he's going to go over 100. I think
And his nickel and the nickel back is hurt on Cincinnati, so that's a good guess.
And I think the other guy I was going to say, I actually think Jalen Hyatt's going to do something in this game. I think the Giants are going to.
Oh, froze. Wait a minute, you froze. Right on Jalen. Now you're back.
Okay, this is really pissing me off. I think the Giants, they have to see what I see, which is that you're using them too obviously when you're putting them out and you're not doing anything else, and then you take them off and bring somebody else on. They have to see that, and I'm almost wondering if they're setting people up for something. And I think you're going to see them. I think we're going to go deep to them early. I think just to pull the defense back, and I think they're going to catch them. They're going to catch them napping. I think Hyatt's going to have one really big play.
This is the secondary to do it against, and this is the pass rush to do it against. So Jones should be able to hold on to the football against this pass rush, and Jalen should put the fear of God in this secondary. So
I think so.
This is the opponent to do that. I do want to say something. You said something I forgot to mention, but you reminded me. So you said earlier how I mentioned how before the offense was going through Malik Nabers, he was getting like 15 passing attempts in his direction each game when he was healthy, and Slayton got 11, so it went down. The difference was, in my mind, maybe this is very simplistic, but that 4 passing difference went to Theo Johnson. So that's one of the ways I liked the offense better last week, is they spread it around more, and we saw, you and I kept talking about Theo Johnson, and he was not getting any catches. And so people were starting, this guy's a bust, he's overrated, whatever. Well, look what happened when you finally threw to him. He not only had catches, he had catches down the field. He can get down the field. So, and he's huge. If you see him in person, he's huge. So if we start scoring in the red zone, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Theo Johnson 2-touchdown game at some point, because he's a big dude and he can catch.
So defensively, I think Phillips is going to be very key. It's a week removed from him finally coming back. He should be a little bit healthier. I think he's going to play a big game, and I think he's going to cause a turnover somewhere in there. I'm going to go with Phillips. So that being said, who are you going with?
I wish it was not a Sunday night game. I hate Sunday night games. I'm gonna go with the Giants. I think they win this game. I think it's going to be close because Cincinnati can score. But they're not a team to be afraid of. If you get beat by the Patriots, you shouldn't be afraid of this team. So I'm going to go with the Giants. There's a lot at stake with them. The only thing I will say, again, Sunday night makes me a little nervous, and the absolute desperation of the Cincinnati. Well, we're desperate too, but Cincinnati, if they lose this game, their season's over. So they may have been over last week, but it's really over if they lose to us.
Yeah, I said last week, because I picked them to get blown out, we might be stuck with having to go with. So if this goes the other way after what I'm about to say, I'm sorry. I actually think the Giants are going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, he froze again. I'm going to drink every time you freeze now.
Nice.
One for me. Now
there we go. All right. We're going to wrap this up. I think the Giants are going to score 37. I think they'll give up some points, but it won't be as much as you think. I think it's going to be in the low 20s for the Bengals. So I'm going to go 37-23. I think we're just going to dominate. I think they're going to keep the foot on the gas, knowing that they have to. And it's going to be kind of a coming out party in a lot of ways because you got Philadelphia next. So from a mental standpoint, we have no baggage here with the Bengals. The baggage is next week. So this is a game I think I'm going to go 37-23. Giants win this game.
We get the 3-3. This gets interesting, and I hope the fans start getting a little more excited about this year. We'll see. We'll see what happens. If they go 2-4 here and they lose this, of course, everyone's going to be again focused on the draft at that point. So
Right.
big game for the team, big game for the Giants.
Big game for Jones.
Daniel
Yep.
Jones. It's a really big game because they need him. And this is an interesting game for the defense. If the defense has a signature game here and does like what you're saying, if we can hold the Bengals somehow to 20 points in this game, I know you should pick 23, but if we can hold them to 20, that's a win against this team. Those receivers are something else. I just worry about the matchups in the secondary in this game.
Yep, it's there. Sometimes though, there's a piece of offense that can control the score. And if we are keeping the ball and if we are scoring touchdowns and then we do hold the Bengals, even once or twice, we get the ball back. Now we're scoring more touchdowns. That puts so much pressure on the other team where doing what you want to do versus what you have to do is drastically different. And the Giants need to do what they want to do. It needs to work, and they need to stay with it all the way. So we'll see. But it'll be an interesting conversation on Monday when we follow this up to see what happens Sunday night.
Yeah.
So other than that, any final thoughts or
don't boo Giants fans if things look down in the first quarter. So look what happened with Eric Gray. So don't get down too early. Stick with it. This team can come back.
But be loud, please. If you're going to be at the stadium, be loud when they have the ball. I want to hear some of the old screaming when the Giants defense was on the field because it used to be a lot of fun to hear that. You just don't, I don't know. They haven't won and I get it. That's a crappy thing, but hopefully we can start seeing that. But either way, let's hope for the best on this one, Eric. And then Monday we'll have something good to talk about.
I'm excited. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. 3-3 would be good at this point.
3-3 after 6 games. All bets are off the rest of the season. Again, I'm sticking with, I had 10-7. You had 10-7. We'll see what happens. But for that, I guess we'll call it a close, and we'll catch you all next week. Again, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.